All right. So we are kicking off a new month here, which means it is time to set our goals for the month. And I want to have a conversation about goal setting. I like having this conversation at the start of every month. And I want to give you guys four important things when it comes to setting goals. Four important things. So the first one I'm going to give you is you've got to connect the gulf. You have to connect the gulf. And what I mean by the gulf is I watch so many people walk around with a gulf between their dreams and what they want and the life that they live. This is a gulf, as in it is so wide for most people, the two are never going to connect. There's never a plan to connect them. And so they walk around with hopes, dreams, goals, the things that they wish they could have, but they're going to have to strike a lottery because their day-to-day life has absolutely zero chance of delivering the goals that they want. And so there's a gulf between these two things. They live a life here, they want things here, and they've resolved themselves to the understanding that, again, unless they win the lottery, they are never going to have the things that they want from life. So if you're going to set goals, you have to connect that gulf. Now, how do you do that? Well, I'm going to give you guys some things. And I've talked about this before, so this should sound familiar. So you've got to start with 7 habits, highly effective people live with the end in mind. You've got to start with this vision of your life. What is it that you want? You've got one life. What do you want from life? Where are you headed? What is this thing doing? Where are you going? You get this vision of a life you want. And guys, it's someday. It's not tomorrow. It's not next year. It's someday. It's down the road. You're dreaming. You can fantasize. It can be whatever you want. You are allowed to want. Please hear me clearly. You have permission to want whatever you want. Sometimes you just need permission. You got one life. You can want that thing. Go want that thing. Go imagine that life. Imagine where you are physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially. Where are you in this life that you want? If you could have your way with the way it ended, where would you be? Imagine that. Now, that's fantasy world. Great. We're going to connect that gulf. So based on where you want to be someday, that someday vision, based on that, where do you need to be? Where do you want to be in 5 years from now in order to feel like you're on pace for that someday vision? Now, even at the 5-year place, you're still kind of playing in fantasy land. There's no business in the world where you can project out and anticipate all the potential variables and obstacles that are going to come. Nobody could have predicted COVID. Very few people could have predicted the housing crisis in '08. There are going to be things that are outside the power to envision or anticipate. So within a 5-year, you're still kind of playing with fantasy. But okay, let's play with it. Just because it's fantasy doesn't mean it's not useful. Let's play with it. Where do you want to be in 5 years? To feel like, man, if I was here in 5 years, I would feel like I'm kind of on pace for where I want to go. All right, good. Now we're going to get practical. Now we're going to go a year from now. Now, when we start playing within the time frame of 1 year, we need to get very practical. This is where goals become those SMART goals, right? Specific, realistic, attainable, whatever the rest of the SMART goals is. This is where your goals, you got to go hit this thing. This is very realistic when you're within a year. We're not fantasizing anymore. We are mapping out a plan. So where do you need to be in 1 year so you're on pace for that 5-year vision? And I separate vision and goal. Vision is outside your ability to project. So we set a someday vision. We set a 5-year vision. We set a 1-year goal. Okay? So in 1 year, where do you need to be so you're on pace for 5? Now, we're going to take that 1 year. We're going to break it into 4 quarters. What needs to happen in each of the 4 quarters to ensure you're on pace for your 1 year goal? All right, let's go smaller. We're going to look at just this quarter. What needs to happen in each of the 3 months of this quarter so you're on pace so you hit the quarter, so you're on pace for the year? What needs to happen in each of these 3 months? Now, let's just zoom in on this month. What needs to happen in each of the 4 weeks of July so you're on pace for the month, so you're on pace for the quarter, so you're on pace for the year, so you're on pace for 5, so you're on pace for your someday goal? What needs to happen in each of these weeks? Now, you see where I'm going? Let's just look at this week. What needs to happen in each of the days this week? This week, so that you're on pace for the month, so you're on pace for the quarter. Now, let's look at today. What needs to happen today so that you're on pace for your week? And when you look at today and you break it down hourly, what did you all of a sudden do? You gave your day, you gave your very hour context to your day, which had context to your week, which had context to your month, your quarter, your year, your 5-year vision, and your ultimate someday life goal. You connected the gulf between the life you're living and the life you want to live. Most people will never go through that work. They will just live in 2 completely different places, living a life boots on the ground, never getting closer to where they want to do. So if you're going to actually set a goal, you need to give it context to something that matters to you. Otherwise, you're setting a goal that's completely arbitrary and has no context or meaning to the life you want to live. You have to connect that gulf. So connect that gulf. Give this very month context to the life you want. All right, that was the first thing, connect the gulf. Second thing you've got to do when you're looking at your short-term action plan, like your plan for today or this week or this month, when you're looking at the short-term action plan, the second thing you have to do is you have to know the cost. If you're going to be doing and achieving these things, you have to understand the cost of those things. It is incredibly naive to set a goal when you have no idea the sacrifice you're going to have to make to hit that goal. New agents, particularly, and new anybody at anything, is particularly bad at this. By nature of being new, they don't know the routine, the rhythms, the obstacles. They don't know that stuff. And so they're naive to go into goals. So they're going to set a goal, but they don't know what that goal means. So a new agent's going to come in and say, I'm going to do 10,000 this month, but they don't know what that's going to mean for them in lead cost, in dials, in appointments set, in appointments run. They don't know their ratios. So it's a completely arbitrary number to throw out there when they don't know the cost. What is it going to cost you to do that in time? What are you going to have to sacrifice? What's it going to cost you in money? What's it going to cost you when you get ghosted? When the things don't line up the way you want it to line up? What's that going to cost you? Are you willing to pay the price? When you don't know the cost, you can't even determine if you're willing to pay the price. This is why new agents have to stick to activity-based goals in order to establish their ratios. A seasoned agent that understands their ratios of dials to answers, answers to appointment set to appointments run to application submitted to policies issued. A seasoned agent that knows those ratios can set a results-based goal because they recognize and understand the cost to get that goal, and they can determine that they're willing to pay the price. If you've never run 20 appointments, if you've never made 1,000 dials, you have no business setting a results-based goal. You may luck into, hear me clearly, luck into results. But those results are not going to be duplicatable based on reverse engineering ratios with lots of data behind it. When you're new, you have one job: collect data. Learn your ratios so that you're in a position to know the cost. Does that make sense? All right, so we're connecting the golf, and then we got to know the cost of our goals. The third thing we have to do is we have to eliminate distractions. If you're going to know the cost and determine that you're willing to pay the price, you're also, if you're not naive, going to know full well that life is not going to politely line up and lay down a perfect red carpeted pathway for you to go implement this plan that you so nicely detailed and put together. There are going to be obstacles. I'm going to argue that 90% of the obstacles are ones that occur so regularly you can anticipate them. So don't be naive. I sat down to dial and the kids, they wouldn't stop knocking on the door and needing stuff. Really, you couldn't see that coming. They're home for the summer and you just, I don't know, surprised the kids needed something? No, you knew that was gonna happen. Plan around that. Eliminate distractions, create boundaries, borders, times, plan, prep. Well, I was gonna go do this, but turns out I just didn't feel like it. Really? Are you surprised by that? You haven't felt like it since you started. Surprised you put together a plan and then just didn't feel like it? Yeah, you could probably see that coming. Plan ahead, create boundaries, eliminate distractions. 90% of the stuff that derails you, if you're honest with yourself, is stuff you could have seen coming a mile away. Something your spouse could have seen coming, something someone that barely knows you could have seen coming, but somehow you're going to play naive. You're going to connect the golf, say, I'm willing to pay the price, and then say, oh no, I wanted to. But I got distracted, and I'm gonna be like, really? You couldn't see those distractions coming? Like, really? Like, if you were honest, you could have seen them coming. You knew they were coming. You halfway determined already that you weren't gonna hit your goals because you saw them coming. You put them in your back pocket as your excuse for not hitting your goal before you even tried to hit your goal. Sorry if I'm being too honest to start a month. Yeah, Trevor. You haven't cleaned underneath that silverware drawer in months. That thing just done popped up on you. Who knew? Who knew that needed to happen? All right. Fourth thing you need to do, you need to respond to feedback with stability. You're going to get feedback as you go. I'm going to read one of my favorite excerpts from one of my favorite books. The book is hands down the best leadership book I have ever read in my entire life. It is the leadership book I have wanted every other leadership book to be, but they all felt to me like they were leaving something hanging until I found this one. And I was like, oh, this is what I've wanted them all to be. Yes, Christina, the book is called Beyond High Performance. The author is Jason Jaggard. I'm going to read this excerpt that is so brilliant. Like it's delicious. I've never even heard this concept from anywhere else, and I was reading this and I'm like, "Oh, this is so good." All right. One night in 1963, in a club in Stuttgart, Germany, Miles Davis, along with some of the best jazz musicians in the world, blew the roof off the place. 10-time Grammy award-winning jazz pianist Herbie Hancock tells the story. Miles Davis and I were performing. Tony Williams was, oh, let's roll that. There we go. Tony Williams was on drums. Ryan Carter was on bass. Wayne Shorter on saxophone. It was a really hot night. The music was tight. It was powerful. It was innovative and fun. We were having a lot of fun. The music was on. Hancock continues. Tony was burning on his drums, and right in the middle of Miles' solos, he was playing one of his amazing solos, and I'm trying to keep up. And I'm playing, and right in the middle of the solo, I play the wrong chord. A chord that sounded completely wrong. Sorry, Patricia, I'm just going to meet you there. Chord that sounded completely wrong. It sounded like a big mistake. And I freaked out. I grimaced. I grabbed my own face and Miles paused. One thing you should know about Miles Davis is his reputation for high standards and a quick temper. If you're an aspiring musician, the last person you want to piss off is Miles Davis. But Miles didn't get angry. He got creative, as Herbie goes on. Miles paused for less than a second, and then he played some chords that made my chord right, that made it correct. This astounded me. I couldn't believe what I heard. Miles was able to make something that was wrong into something that was right. What I realize now is that Miles didn't hear it as a mistake. He heard it as something that happened, just an event. And so that was part of the reality of what was happening at that moment, and he dealt with it. He found something. Since he didn't hear it as a mistake, he felt like it was his responsibility to find something that fit, and he was able to do that. That taught me a very big lesson about not only music, but about life. We can look for the world to be as we would like it to be as individuals. You know, make it easy for me. We can look for that, but I think the important thing is that we grow. And the only way we can grow is to have a mind that is open enough to accept and experience situations as they are and turn them into medicine, turn poison into medicine, take whatever situation you have and make something constructive happen with it. I love that because life is going to happen. Stuff is going to happen. You're going to make wrong choices. You're going to make wrong decisions. You're going to fall flat on your face. And every time life happens at you, if you give those elements value judgments, this was good, this was bad, this derailed me. If you have a judgmental reaction to that thing, as in giving a value judgment to that thing that just happened, you are fatalistically tying yourself to an entire pathway based on how you emotionally interpreted a thing that just happened. What if the thing that happened wasn't necessarily good or bad? What if it was just a thing that happened? And since it happened, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about it? Maybe that was uncomfortable. I didn't really like that that happened, but okay, this is where we're at. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to fix it? What are we going to do? This is the position we find ourselves in. Remember, it's never about where you find yourself. It's about how you respond to where you find yourself. Okay, that happened. Didn't expect that. What are we going to do about it? When you can learn to adopt that type of neutral reactivity, curious reactivity, creative reactivity, then the outside world does not have the power to fatalistically derail you down a preordained path. Oh, this is so bad. And then you go do bad things in response to it, and you've already determined you're going to lose and your month is over. Oh, we're halfway through the month and I'm only a quarter of the way to my goal. This is bad. I'm never going to hit it. So I'm going to stop showing up for accountability because I'm embarrassed to show my numbers. It's one way. It's not the way of growth. It's not the way of responsibility. It's not the way of maturing. It's not the way of developing. That certainly is a way to react. But it's not the way to react if you want to grow, get stronger, and go reach your goals. You've got to learn to respond to feedback with stability. Clear-eyed vision on where you're going. Connect the golf, know the cost, eliminate distractions, and then respond to feedback with stability. That's what I've got for you guys. Monday morning, kickoff to the month of July.